Yeah, please introduce yourself so that I have an idea who is asking what.
Sir, my name is Anjali. I am a PhD student at Center for Women's Studies. Um my question is very small. I forgot the phrase you used in the context of Nancy Fraser's critical theory.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted you to.
Oh, it's a
remind me.
clarification. Yeah, so this is an essay on feminism, capitalism, and three terms. What is the third term? You were there in the class, right? He doesn't want to read English text, he reads only Bengali. What is the third term? Feminism, capitalism, and something. Check the title, where Nancy Fraser makes this argument, I think, which is an extremely instructive argument for interrogating post-colonial theory. She talks about the uncanny double, right? So she makes a very interesting argument where she says both second wave feminism, and since you're in women's studies, you should take this argument into women's studies, and neoliberalism, both started in 1980s, and both make similar kinds of argument. Second wave feminism also was anti-law. They were about withdrawal of state, and that's precisely what neoliberalism also wanted. So she argues maybe feminists were making from a different vantage point, but then their arguments completely were feeding into the neoliberal global capital chain. So that's the uncanny double. That's another life it takes. So I'm arguing that post-colonial theory therefore also has its uncanny double. We don't have to impute Hinduness to their argument the way Meera Nanda does. I don't think that would be a fair reading. All of them had, if you look at the trajectory of post-colonial scholarship in the past, I think it's a fairly subversive project in its time and space. It's discursive and subversive. But it is this uncanny double that post-colonial categories have taken, like the example of vernacular I gave, or the example of community as a category, or the example of the local. I think they feed in a different way from the times of colonial modernity to late capitalism. That shift, I don't think post-colonial scholarship is able to imagine. They are not able to account for the uncanny double, right? So that's where I invoke the category. Yeah, he had a question. Yeah, please go ahead.
So
Ask him to introduce.
Could you please introduce yourself, then ask?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Swarup from political science background. So you're finding a convergence between post-colonial scholars and Hindutva sections. So in this regard, can we look at the dynamics, how Dalit Muslim scholars are taking forward post-colonial scholarship?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, that how Dalit scholarship has looked at post-colonial. More than Dalit scholarship looking at post-colonial scholarship, it is a post-colonial scholarship which I think has attempted to appropriate Dalit scholarship. So post-colonial scholarship, for instance, have been at the forefront of supporting this lived experiential arguments that Dalit scholarship and Dalit movements have projected. So as I was explaining, East versus West incommensurability at one level also translated into incommensurability within the Indian context. So I think this nature of difference, that's why I emphasize. This also looks modernist because it is emphasizing on nature of difference. So this is highly inconsistent. Therefore, I would argue that it's a highly inconsistent project. Post-colonial in Delhi, I presented where I said it's only a theoretical nut. There is no theory of post-coloniality. On one hand, they argue about this extreme lived experience. On the other hand, they argue about collective. I think Supriya, we organized Dipankar Gupta's. Dipankar offered a very interesting critique. So on one hand, it is collective sensibilities that are common, civilizational. On the other hand, they take the language of incommensurability. While modernity, I think, allows differences in the dialogic porous sense, not as final differences. So read Judith Butler on identity, she makes this. No identity is defined against someone, but identity has to be achieved against someone. Therefore, identity can never have its fuller shape. Because only if there is other can you have this identity. How can you overcome the other, then have your identity? There's nothing, when there's no other, there's no identity left. Therefore, she says, identities always will remain incomplete. They're always in tension. So there is a porousness to how modernity is attempting to theorize the identity question. Post-coloniality theorizes identity in incommensurable sense. It's a zero-sum game. Critical theory in axolonots will argue that recognition is social differences keep proliferating. We learn from each other's differences. In post-colonial scholars, identities are logged. Yet at another level, they emphasize on commonality, on civilization. I think this is a great inconsistency where I see it is this inconsistency in an epistemic imaginative sense which has become the source, political source for rise of far-right populist violence. If you observe Hindutva closely, this is what it does. It is driving in deeper social conflicts all over, micro conflicts within Dalits, within subcastes, within Dalit and OBC, even as it emphasizes on common civilization, great Indic civilization, great continuity, we are all one, we are all Hindus. I think structure of the argument between post-colonial and right-wing populism is very, very similar. I know Jeet will be disappointed and struggling. Why did I invite? This is like, he would be repenting for inviting. But this is the reality, unfortunately. And much of it, this damage has been done by Badrulog Bengali scholarship. Who like Gandhi never visited a village? Who like Gandhi are all Badrulog? From Kolkata, they go straight to Colombia. En route, they meet Bangia and go. That is the problem.
This is Brahmins pitting against the Brahmins in a different region.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Then, sir. When you mentioned Hindu right wing invoking, I'm Sajjad from Department of History. Sir. So, invoking categories of community, collective interest, sensibilities, and solidarity. So, okay, the current situation is that the Hindu right wing has a good hold. I mean, the narrative, their narrative is the narrative. So how do you? I mean, I'm asking about biding time here. By the time someone comes up, a modernist critique of or a way of whatever, a theory comes up. So how do you bide time? I mean, why not invoke ideas of identity when it comes to other cultures, etc.?
No, I'm not getting your question.
No, why not?
What do you mean by time?
Biding time as in how long does it take, see, to complete homogenization? Will there be heterogeneity left, or you completely disregard the argument itself?
No, the point is not how long will it take. The point is what is the hegemonic epistemic strength of the Hindutva project. I think this simple-minded modernist critique, it just homogenizes everything. It colonizes everything. That's not going to work.
So if you were to say, sir, for example, if someone who ascribes to that particular ideology says that I refer to the land as motherland, and I come from a place where we call it fatherland or father tongue. Okay, we start, so the difference comes from there itself. And then how you look at the world, how one looks at the world, how one understands the world, etc. So on and so forth.
No, Hindutva will say father is married to the mother. So they don't have problem with it. They will marry your father to their mother. So I don't think there's any incommensurability. Hindutva world is always it integrates. Right? So I think the strength of Hindutva language is what we have to understand. Like its language is communitarian universality. It is a new language. It is bringing in civilizational universality, which has great resonance. That's where I said we have to take that post-colonial scholars were early to hint. So we have to make a very graded argument here. So they make that point, but project differences that are incommensurate. So what is the way alternative? Is the alternative that we take the civilizational idea of collective commonality, continuity more seriously than modernity does, and then marry that off to a modernist notion of differences where differences are proliferating, dialogic and open-ended. I think therefore we need a fresh imagination. I don't think we can offer a convincing critique of Hindutva or politically restrain it with the secular, modernist, liberal scholarship that we have in India. They are continuing to offer that same old critique, they are colonizing tribals. But I don't think tribals are feeling they are being colonized. They are feeling they are being integrated. When market is integrated, when technology is integrated, why should tribals not get integrated? Which tribe would want to remain isolated and which tribe would want to remain in their pristine, authentic form? This imagination of authenticity is core of postcoloniality and not of Hindutva. It's for post-colonial scholarship. Hindutva understands that they need modernity too. But they'll make an argument, rhetoric of authenticity, but project modernity, push market, and get them Hinduized. This combination, I think, is a very lethal combination for people. If common people can feel culturally more integrated and they're feeling more empowered being Hinduized, because that Hinduization is coming along with modern infrastructure. So we'll have to get into the core of their strength. That is why Hindutva is convinced it's a long-term project, not because of its own strength, because of the weakness of the Bhadralok scholarship. The cosmetic critique that Bhadralok scholarship is offering, this is colonization, this is European, this is homogenization. I don't think it is able to understand because subaltern scholarship, I think it's weakest in understanding subaltern sensibilities. Subaltern today needs mobility. That mobility is being today depicted. If that mobility is today seen by subaltern in terms of getting Hinduized and getting economic mobility, social mobility, if Hinduization becomes, metaphorically stands for greater social economic mobility, that is its greatest appeal. If you go there and tell people, no, you are getting hegemonized, you are getting colonized, therefore the secular liberal critique is not working. How do you reformulate? There I think this question comes in, that should we frame question of differences, marry them differently to a different kind of civilizational continuity project? Is it even possible? What would it look like? I think these are the questions we need to really discuss in some depth. Yeah.
Hello. Namaskar, sir.
Sit, introduce and then ask.
Sure, sir. Namaskaram, sir. I'm Mangpi. I'm a research scholar at the Center for Regional Studies and someone who is a huge admirer of your work. So, I have a very straightforward, direct
Just
question.
move away a little from
Move
my,
away.
it's not clear.
Fine?
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just speak without.
Yeah, that's
No,
it.
sir, rather, I have a very straightforward, direct question when you talk about the integration of tribe. When we look at the Northeast, particularly in states like Arunachal Pradesh and to a large extent in Tripura and all these states, we have seen these organizations like the Banavasi Kalyan Ashram, who has been, and it won't be an exaggeration to say that some of their projects have largely paid off. To a great extent.
Largely?
Paid off. Paid off.
Paid off. Paid off. Paid. They're being paid. Yeah. Huh?
Successful is saying.
Yes.
Paid off. They paid off. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the idea behind this kind of project, which can be conspicuously understood, and like I said, it won't be an exaggeration that they have been largely successful. So my question is that what is the kind of a counter argument or counter mobilization framework that this kind of organizations are doing in all these?
Why do you need a counter if the successful tribals are happy? That's the first question you have to ask. On whose behalf are you launching the counter? As I said, I've just come back from Tripura. This is a shirt tribal students gifted me.
No, is the
So you cannot, I'm wearing it so that you don't accuse me of being modernist. I'm also indigenous. I'm being from indigenous tribal. Jamaitia tribe gifted me. So they are very happy with that project. They think that Hinduization helps us. There is a mobility, as I told you. I visited interior tribal areas. Santals are now saying we are descendants of Lord Krishna. Maybe RSS is, Vanvasi Sangha, ashrams have given this, all that, narrative. But why are tribals accepting it? That's the question I was interviewing them. That's fine. You're being, some parties it's being incentivized. But by and large, what I found was that this idea that tribals want to stick to their authentic identity, that is stuck in time and space, that they have their own local deities, and they want to continue to remain only with those forms of cultural practices, I think is a misplaced idea. They're open. They said, it's okay, so every tribal household, I have photos, I'll share with you. They're building big Krishna temples. Janmashtami now in interior Tripura areas is a big festival. I asked you, you are Santals, what happened to Komram Bhim, what happened to your local deities? Oh, hey, chalta rahega wo, that's a side.
And sir, that I believe is the biggest tragedy. So
For you, studying in that is a tragedy for me. Those of you who have gone out of tribal areas, getting English education, will lead a middle class urban life. For you, loss of tribal identity is a nostalgia. You are not going to go back to Tripura and live in your village.
I will refute, sir. I will.
None of you will, I can tell you. You are arguing for that return of that pristine, return to the roots. But tribals living there, I didn't see any resistance. Even I was disturbed. So I said, no, there has to be some what will happen to Santal identity in 20 years, 40 years time. I mean, I can really see the trajectory of things to come. That in 30, 40 years time, many of these identities would be so weak, so lost in memory. Because most of young tribal, there are young tribal girls who took me around in these areas. They're all English educated, living in Agartala. So, this concern we all are feeling, this is a modern, secular, disturbed sense. But what happens to different society entities? What happens to... But is that a real concern on the ground?
I think you are making very sweeping comments. It's not like that. Of course, there are some impact and influence of Hindutva in some pockets, but in some, large area, there is a lot of resistance against Hinduization. Of course, there is in Central India, Sarna movement, and even in now, Northeast India, particularly after the Manipur incident, now, although large people into Christianity, now they are also bringing back their ancestral worshipping and another stuff. So, so there is
Let's hope Bangya is right, but as far as I have seen, the momentum is not in terms of arresting and going back to those identities. At what term we might take, that identities might take a return, I don't know.
Recently, Mohan Bhagwat himself said that so their idea is to make their slogan is Samaj ko Sang Banana. Okay, so he was saying that they are not completely successful. They are not successful only in North India and some pockets. So their project is very large.
Long term, yeah. But what, as I said, Bangya, we can show concrete example. But I'm saying there's a momentum in that direction. That our critique, one, there is a momentum. Second, I think our critique that tribals, this is all colonization, is a very insufficient argument. I don't think...
No, but there is always this commonsensical thing, without some conscious, you get influenced by something.
So that's
There
so
will
I'm
be-
saying we need to take that process seriously.
there
No?
will be some point where the subaltern fits back with his own spontaneity. So we wait for this spontaneity.
No,
What
I
you
would
see.
see it differently that if
Yeah.
there is influence and that possibility is there, there is no reason why RSS should stop. I fully support RSS project. There's a possibility any organization which wants to improve its footprint will do that. The question that we should ask is that are they doing through force? Are they doing monetary incentive? Many places I found it is not force. The moment that cultural discourse is reaching tribal areas, there is a certain alignment.
It's full of violence.
Let's hope so. We'll see Bangyas sticking to that old colonization project, but I see that that's gradually withering away. That we'll need a different critique. Suppose, as I said, that even those pockets where tribals have accepted this process of invasion, how would we critique it?
No, it's not actually acceptance. They're actually trying exploiting the existing belief system and traditions and practices in the
So that's the
Adivasi
thing,
society.
sir. But that's again the manga. I'm qualifying your category of exploiting.
False consciousness.
Post-colonial scholars themselves will say that's not agent. You are robbing them of their agents. Let's see them as agentive, not exploited, hoodwinked, cheated, false conscious. But let's for a moment drop those categories and see there is a momentum. There is some cultural process that's happening. We do not know why. We have to find a fuller explanation. But as long as we have this mode of arguing, exploitation, it is colonization, that being forced, we will not be able to. I think that's a different momentum that RSS is finding. Why should it be so? At what point, as you rightly said, there could be resistance because certain Hinduization might enter into certain conflict. We don't know. But as things stand today, we need to consider these old categories don't really explain for me.
A friend from Orissa was saying, now they're doing this Gayatri mantra group. They are going in Adivasi areas and they put up the entire, first thing they do is they distribute sweets to children. Children generally attract to anything.
Any sweet.
Yeah. So then they engage them in some play and then go some bhajans and see they don't see any harm in
Exactly.
singing these songs and all that. They take it as a kind of fun and but eventually so where this is going, they will realize at some point. So not now. So what is
I don't know. Let's hope then we will
and now
come back. Jeet
since,
will invite me again
they
when
are-
that realization
they are
comes.
now appointing Sanatana teachers in BJP ruling states in the schools, primary and high schools. So so it's now basically through institution they are doing it.
So I think that's happening across, like Jats. I also did surveys in Haryana. Jats had their own deities, but lot of Jats joining Indian army come back with Hindu sensibilities. Then they bring those Hindu gods. So I'm saying once this process stops, I think there is no way we can rewind it to the old idea of tribal in the colonial period. We might critique whatever, but this process has started. I don't think there's a point of reversal so easily. Because once the same thing I have asked about Santal. Santal said we have always remained Hindu. Who said we are not Hindus? This is what the Santal tribals told me. But I said universities में they taught that you are not Hindus. ये सब बेकार बात है. हम बहुत पहले से हिंदू है. हिंदू के साथ हम संताल है.
About 70 lakhs Santalis claim as surplus.
Political organizations are doing. I also so that's a point. So in the process, I also met an important gentleman who's translating a lot of documents into English. This Santal, and he was from the dominant tribal community. Anybody here from Tripura? Some Dev, that title of that tribal. He offered all this critique that we are talking about. He is a perfectly English educated gentleman living in Agartala. So I'm saying there is this, the nature of post-colonial critique has been taken over by the elites. It is not explaining the subaltern
I mean, so that
sensibility.
is how only some educated critical thinkers will understand the logic and the agendas
Arja, so,
behind their politics.
so that
and
means our
obviously
discourse is
they
not entering that
debate.
tribal life world. We'll maybe need a different language,
Yeah.
different modes of articulation. That's the point I was making. Yes, Kiran. Yeah.
So I just wanted to take forward the question of Professor Bangya. So it's a practical question. The arguments, entire arguments of Professor Kancha, Professor Bangya, all others. What if like Bahujan, Dalit Bahujan educated, English educated, the class, whatever, go back to the society, to go back to our society and see and tell them our gods and our goddesses are different than the so-called agenda of Hindutva. Because like Bhairappa, we have the different forms of our own gods and goddesses, and then emphasize on the project of English education and others. So will it stop the agenda of Hindutva? That
It will, but what you are saying won't happen. Because no English educated Bahujan would want to go back and have his deities. Because you are forgetting another important category called class. Once there is a certain class mobility, and this is where Marxism does a disservice. Conventional Marxism does not understand that class comes with a culture. Class is not a pure economic variable. Once you have class mobility, you have a certain cultural ethos accompanied. So, educated Bahujan, educated BC, educated Dalit for me is more a middle class than a Dalit. No Dalit would today want to go back and bring his deity into urban areas. Which Dalit will do it? He wants to be an urban dweller. His dignity and recognition is an urban dweller. His idea is to make his children English speaking, modern, cosmopolitan. So that's an unworkable, like many of Kancha's ideas, this is also an unworkable idea. So we have to take class seriously, but not in the conventional Marxist sense, but the more contemporary critical theory sense that caste comes with culture. See, if you read original D.L. Seth's argument on new middle classes, this is what his argument was, that when after the OBC reservations, OBCs will have new middle classes and they'll bring new social ethics, which are very Bahujan ethics. Do you find it anywhere? You don't. That's the character of class. Otherwise, you don't belong to that class. Class will have certain clear cultural markers. So you cannot expect these Bahujans, the very fact that among Dalits, even the middle class Dalits, they still continue to own up Ambedkar, you have those SC/ST organizations, is the last relic of anti-caste consciousness. The next generation, you will not even have that. That's the character of class. So problem again with much of Dalit Bahujan literature and argument is it does not take class seriously. It takes caste as some enclosed category. It does exclusive through caste analysis, which is also part of the problem with post-colonial analysis. That it can push forward this kind of arguments. But there we'll have to take class very seriously. I don't see resistance coming from middle class, urban, backward caste or Dalits.
To add a small point from what I am listening and the right question you raised. Hindutva fundamentally looks to me, I'm Vagish, I teach political science at Nalsar University of Law. I find Hindutva as a new messianic or new machine-based or machinery-based thing. It's learning, it's pretty seriously modern. Its sensibilities of collective and other things are rooted in the Indian context, and then to that extent, for example, a Hindutva machine, when it goes into a tribal land, it says, we are also animists. it speaks that kind of a language. See, if I become a messianic, and if somebody, I'm going to a tribal land, and if somebody asks, what is your religion? I say that I worship Tulasi. It's a plant, right? I worship Ashwatha, or I worship that people tree, or Banyan, for that matter, right? I said, they are okay for me. Christian machine was diametrically opposite to that idea. They said the Anya, the others. Now, Hindutva is a modern project which understood what Christian missionary couldn't do. So they will take the language of plurality and they will go. And that is how the dominant, the Gayatri Parivars, this Parivar, giving sweets and all that. At one point of time, that famous African thing. First they gave us Bible, when I opened our eyes, our land has gone into their hands. So that's how the Vanavasi Kalyan Ashrams, Gayatri Parivars, they go with that acceptability. Now the second part of it, and I'm there. Bahujan multilingualism, is needed today. Bhadralok multilingualism has born already, and it has its own life. The Kayasthas, the Brahmins, the others becoming Dubasis or whatever, or becoming multilingual and all that. And they're continuing that multilinguality even today. I want now the Bahujans to become multilingual so that they can bring their cultural practice customized into the urban space. Otherwise, they brought it. Bonalu is in the urban space. Don't think that the non-Brahmin, non-Vedic things are not in the urban space. They are in urban space. But to bring them into urban space, you have to customize. Brahmins customized it. I'm telling you as a lived experience, I'm telling you. Brahmins customized their practices to the urban living. Or for the anglicized living, they customized. That is what called their samskarana of their women.